What's up, y'all? Sparta here. For this video, I want to finally do a comparison between the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III and the LG V60. Now, apologies, it's a little bit dim in here. It's gray outside. It's daylight savings and all that. It's getting darker, and I only really have a small lamp on, so details are not going to be as good in this video. I'm also just running it at 1080p 60, so I don't have to worry about having to make another clip every 5 minutes, but it's whatever. Let's get into this. Ever since the beginning of this year, I've been wanting the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III. Initially, it was because I was, cautiously excited for what LG may have been doing this year, but then they announced that they are no longer they're no longer going to be in the mobile division, and basically that means the V60 is their last flagship phone, right? Then leaks came out about the Velvet 2 Pro, and it was not going to have a headphone jack and all this other stuff, and this was basically going to be the last true V-series phone that you can get, and it does suck, right? I've been covering the V-series since the V20, and I've had them ever since the V10, but I started my channel basically, the V20 basically bolstered my channel up. So the V-series has a very special place in my heart. Aside from just being a very great series of phones, as well as the the G series, the LG G series as well, being a very good series of phones, I really don't feel like there was a complete dud in the V series whatsoever. Both of these companies have had their fair share of having to reevaluate their mobile situations, whether it be Sony or LG, and Sony was in a very similar spot back when they were making phones every 6 to 8 months, right? Back when there was a Z5 Premium, and then they made 8 months later XZ Premium, and then like all these multiple variations of phones, and they had to scale back, and that's when the Xperia 1, 5, and 10 started to come out, right? And now Sony, they're back up to profits, and that's really nice. LG couldn't really bounce back from that. LG was, number 3 or 4 in the market, and they felt like they really had to compete with Samsung and Apple. So what would they do? Attempt to put out the same numbers as Samsung and Apple, but at a far cheaper price, and just being as competitive as well. And that just didn't work for them. So it does suck, but I didn't really mean to go on that little, I guess you could say obituary, but it's fine. It's whatever. 1 Mark III versus V60. The V60, as you guys know, is one of my favorite phones. Honestly, period. It's a really good phone. Still to this day, the Snapdragon 865 is just in this phone, and overall, with what this phone can do and the battery life and all that stuff, this phone is still a screamer. And we'll get into why I feel this phone is still amazing to use even to this day. You can get it like for $350, $30 to $350 off Amazon, $380 off Amazon, around the same price on Swappa. So this is a steal, honestly. And if you want an LG phone and you've been wanting to get into LG phones, this is probably one of the best ways you can do it, since it's one of their last, including the Velvet and Wing. So, yeah. Let's run down the specs here. Triple 12 megapixel sensor array on the back of the Xperia 1 Mark III. You have your ultra-wide... Apologies, my mom called me. But, yeah, like I was saying, triple 12 megapixel setup. You have your ultra-wide, your main sensor, and your dual-phase telephoto lens. You have your ITOF sensors right here for faster autofocusing speeds. It's pretty much the focus of this camera array right here is speed, quality and efficiency, basically. It's a very fast, very quick camera when it comes to focusing as well as taking pictures. The V60 has a 64 megapixel main sensor and a 16 megapixel ultra wide with your Z camera on the back, which basically essentially does the same thing. It could also do like 3D mapping for, like, say you want to for AR and all that stuff. You can do that on the back of this phone as well. Really nice. You have your dual flash right here, and you have your singular flash right up there as well. Decent. It's not as good as this, but if you don't really care about that, that's totally fine. I personally don't. The main sensor on here crops down to a 16 megapixel image, so when you do take pictures outside of the 64 megapixel mode, you'll still get an overall sharper image than you will on here. It's not that big of a deal. I personally saw when I was comparing this phone to the S21 Ultra that consistently the V60 had the overall sharper image. So I don't know if it's going to be the same with this, but overall I do feel like both take very sharp, very high quality images. Don't really have to worry about that. Both have manual photo modes, both have manual video modes, and Sony does it differently than LG does, but obviously I'll get into that later. Yeah, this has a 10 megapixel selfie camera on the front here. I believe it can do 4K 60. I barely use the selfie camera, so please bear with me. Yep, it can do 4K 60. Okay, you can do up to 4K 60 FPS selfie video recording on the V60 here. This has an 8 megapixel selfie shooter on the front. You can do up to only do up to 1080p 30. I know people are like, ooh, just 1080p 30. Why just that? Why I feel is totally fine for Sony to just have it at 1080p 30 is the focus is not the selfie camera. It's mainly this here. Right, it's mainly the 3 lenses on the back of the phone. You're not going to be shooting pro video with the selfie camera, right? So it makes sense to me why they would just go with 1080p 30 and an 8 megapixel sensor. Good enough for video calls, good enough for selfies, honestly, and good enough for like selfie videos, vlogs that you want to post on YouTube and whatnot. I personally feel like it's totally adequate for those sort of things. This will definitely be better, but for YouTube streaming as well, neither of these are going to be like a S21 Ultra 40 megapixel sensor, which is super sharp and very good on the front of the phone. But honestly, if you're doing something like live streaming from your selfie camera, all of them get locked to 720p anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Let's talk ports and all that stuff. You got both these phones have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, but both of them also do this differently. The V60 has the Hi-Fi quad DAC, which is, as you guys know, one of the best, probably still the best solution you could have for mobile audio in terms of, say, a phone anyway. Obviously, your dedicated, audio players and all that will definitely do better, because they're made for that, but the V60 is definitely no slouch. While this does have a headphone jack and it has this really quality amp and DAC in here, the amp is a bit weak. It's a bit weak so you can't do things like drive higher impedance headphones. These can drive up to 600 ohm headphones. I don't know what the max impedance these can go up to. I assume like around every other phone, like 50 to 80. So yeah, not the best, not the strongest amp in the world, but honestly, the sound that you'll get out of this is quite clean. It's quite flat. It makes Sennheiser IE300 sound flat, whereas I plugged them back into my V60. Bass is there. So yeah, if you want if you want a more spacious, clean vocal, a more spacious, clean vocal and bassy sound, you're definitely gonna have to go with this. The bass doesn't muddy out anything at all, honestly. And that's something that I do like with LG's partnership with Meridian in general, with every single product that is tuned by Meridian. But this wasn't tuned by Meridian, but I feel like they took heavy inspiration from that, and that's really nice. But if you want the more clean, flat sound, you're gonna have, or not clean, the more flat sound, you're gonna have to go with something like you're gonna have to go with the Xperia 1 Mark III. That's just what you're gonna have to go with. Both have USB-C ports on the bottom. Both have mics on the top and bottom. Boom, 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 and SIM tray right here. You have your toolless SIM card slot SIM tray right here, which I have the European model, so it does have dual SIM. So you can either do 2 SIMs or you can do a SIM and an SD card. Right now, I have no SIMs in there. They're both, my one SIM is in here for AT&T. One is in my OnePlus 9 for for Google Fi, and so I have one 512 gigabyte card. I have 512 gigabytes of internal storage and a terabyte SD card in here. Whereas I have a 400 gig SD card in here and 128 gigs of internal storage, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 12 gigabytes of RAM. Dual front-facing speakers. You have your typical front firing and bottom firing stereo speakers on here. Both phones have really good stereo speakers. I'm not going to say anything too terrible about them. I think both of them do a very good job. Both are clear. Both don't distort at all. In terms of which one I prefer, I do prefer the Xperia 1 Mark III solely because I'm not covering anything when I touch the side of the phone. So that's very nice. So yeah, in terms of that, the dual front-facing speakers are definitely something that more phones should bring back. Sorry, hiccups. Hiccups. But yeah. Nice. Let's get on to the displays. Both of these are OLED. This is I think both are 6.7 inches. They're pretty much the same size. It's just the V60 is wider. 21:9, 20.5:9, 4K 120 hertz, 1080p 60 hertz, 240 hertz touch sampling rate. I assume this is just a 120 hertz touch sampling rate. Typically, when you do have a phone with a 60 hertz display, it'll just have a 120 hertz touch sampling rate to make sure that things feel smooth. And the V60 definitely does feel smooth. No real issues there. In terms of what I feel about the V60 going with just a 60 hertz display, I don't mind it at all, personally. I've said this ever since the beginning. Due to what this phone is designed for, due to how well this phone handles everything that LG claimed that it was going to do, very good battery, for example, just going down to 60 hertz, especially when the UI overall is still very smooth, I really don't have any sort of issue with what LG did here at all, in terms of just having a 60 hertz display. 1080p also isn't bad. I know a lot of people sit here and say, oh, I can't just do 1080p anymore on an $800 phone. That's ridiculous. But me personally, I feel like LG did a very good job with how crisp and clean this display is. It gets very bright as well. As you guys can see here, it gets very bright. Really no issues there. I'll do the same on here. Both of these displays get quite bright. And I really don't think you're going to have any sort of issues with either of these outdoors, especially this. This definitely gets the brighter out of the two. But in terms of, say, Sony going with a 4K panel and even 120 hertz, which is going to make it so that the display doesn't get nearly as bright as it does on here, this was perfectly viewable outdoors in terms of, say, in the sun and all that stuff. I really had no issues with that. Sony, I feel, did quite a good job in terms of that. Really no issues there. In terms of Bluetooth performance, I feel both do a very good job. Bluetooth 5.1 versus Bluetooth 5.2, whatever. Connecting these with either my LG Tone Frees, my Sony WF-1000 XM4s, the new Soundcore Life 3 Pro, or Liberty 3 Pro. I meant to say Liberty 3 Pro. Both of these do a very good job. Really no problems there. Obviously, both support LDAC depending on the headphones you're using, and both sound fantastic. This was my work phone for a long time, and it never failed me whatsoever. And I guess in terms of that, we'll get into the battery life portion of this. The battery life on both of these phones, this is still fantastic. This is still a phone that I would recommend. Whether dual screen or not, this is a phone I'd recommend you get if you want a phone that's going to last you. I just got my dad this phone, the V60. I don't know how he feels about it yet because he's only had it for a few days. But the V60 still lasts me damn near too long, I'd say. You could check my community tab for like the battery life posts I've been doing recently. This can get 8 hours. This can get up to 8 hours and like 39 minutes of the YouTube playback at the highest quality available at the time, which I think was 1080p 60. I used the exact same 15-hour video, which was a Fallout 4 long playthrough. And both of these did very nice. Roughly, both were at 40-ish% brightness. And the V60 did 16 hours and I think 17 minutes of screen on time. I had to play the video again and have it die there. Whereas the Xperia 1 Mark III was only able to get 8 hours and 39 minutes into the playthrough before I had to put it back on the charger. And that's not bad at all. I personally think that's totally fine, especially for how thirsty this display is. 4K 120 hertz, 4500 milliamp hour battery. I personally don't think that's bad at all. That's roughly, that even does slightly better than phones like the Galaxy S21 Ultra with a 5000 milliamp hour battery. Where that phone was only able really to net me like 8 hours and 10 minutes, I think, of screen on time. So this is definitely doing it for that. 4 hours and 11 minutes of auto grinding King of Fighters All-Stars on here. 6 hours and 30 minutes on here. Both of these are going to be powerhouses in terms of gaming like that and auto grinding. But the very big benefit that you get out of getting an Xperia 1 Mark III for things like that is HS power control. You go into here, right? Okay, no, I didn't mean to do that, but try to hit the information button. You go there, you hit the settings icon right there. You have to turn on this. You just have to, because this HS power control is a feature that every phone should have, or something very similar to it if Sony has a patent for it or something like that, where it doesn't give power to the battery, it just powers the overall system, thus making it to where it bypasses things like battery throttling for performance and stuff like that, and thus the phone overall runs cooler. And it basically keeps the phone at 1% the entire time that you're using it. I played Call of Duty Mobile for like maybe 30-40 minutes at one time. I think the phone was at like 90% battery, and it stayed at 90 the entire time. That's crazy. I've done things like render out a video, put HS power control, put it on the charger where it automatically activates HS power control, and then it just renders the video and it stays at 1 percentage point the entire time. Those are things that I feel power users should have. And I do feel like this would count as a power user phone with a feature like that. The only problems I have is that their camera apps aren't available in HS Power Control unless you download the Videography Pro app, APK, and put it on your Xperia 1 Mark III, which is pretty much the only one that I'm able to get on here. You're not going to be able to get HS Power Control on, say, the video app, and I don't know why it was turned off, but whatever. Very nice. I really do like this phone for things like gaming. It runs games like a dream, bro. Like a dream. Call of Duty, this is one of the only 2 devices that I've ever owned that can run Call of Duty at 120 hertz. Like, the only other device was the iPad Pro M1. But this can do it, and it does it very well. Other games that claim that they can run at 120 hertz but don't, you can force them to run at 120 hertz, whereas you can't do that on other phones. To me, that is very nice. This phone is still very good for gaming, though. It is capped at 60, obviously, because it's just a 60 hertz panel. But I really have no problems with how this phone handles games. The V60, it's still very good, man. Especially for longevity. When 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross actually allowed me to auto grind with just the energy and not with some random items that you need to use that they decided to change. This did like 9 hours and 31 minutes. And it hurts that I can no longer do that testing. I can only use KOF All-Star for that kind of thing now. Or maybe even Marvel Future Fight. I'll see about that. But yeah, this is still a very good phone for things like that. Fast charging, both have fast charging. Both come with chargers in the box. This comes with a 30 watt. This comes with a 25 watt. I think the V60 caps it at 20. I don't remember. There was a little bit of controversy around that, but honestly, the phone charges fast enough for me, especially with the amount of battery that you do get out of the V60. Having to wait an hour and 40 minutes for the entire phone, for the phone to charge is like, whatever. Like, especially since you're not going to be draining it from 100 to 0 every single day. That's just for testing, right? What I do. And you shouldn't really be doing that anyway, because it'll affect the longevity of the battery of your phone. Let's talk about the user interface and software experience now. LG UX, I think 4 is on here. Android 11, stock Android on here with some Sony apps, basically. That's all that they really did, was put Sony apps on here. And this obviously runs far smoother. I'm not going to talk about 120 hertz when it comes to this. It doesn't really make me say that. It makes me kind of feel the same way that I've always felt about 120 hertz, is that it's nice. But so long as the phone has a very good panel, very quality panel, and the UI runs very smooth, 60 hertz is totally serviceable. The only thing that this 120 hertz 4K 240 hertz touch sampling rate display has ever made me like say, okay, I can't go back, is like I can't really go back to something like a S21 Ultra. That phone felt quite laggy and stuttery after using this phone, and it's very smooth display. Phones like the OnePlus 9, very good phone, adaptive 120 hertz display. YouTube runs pretty choppy. It runs at a pretty choppy 60 on that, whereas on this, it's just smooth. Like it's just smooth, man. Like this phone is damn near speed incarnate. Like it's like, used to think that OnePlus was that. Sony has done something very nice to where they're like, okay, we'll just give them stock Android and give them apps to utilize, our apps to utilize their phone to a better potential than just a basic stock Android phone. And they've done really good with this. I really do like this a lot. The 4K, in terms of the 4K, I will say that the 4K is nice. I wouldn't necessarily say it's an overall game changer. It's not something that I feel is needed, but if you want it, you want it. And it's kind of a bragging right to be like, my phone has a 4K display, bro. and it doesn't completely decimate the battery. That's something that's really nice about this phone. Sony did a very good job in making sure that your battery doesn't get completely messed up with that. Let's talk about cameras and the philosophy behind both of these cameras. The V60 is, I guess you could say, more conventional, especially compared to the Sony here, the Xperia. The camera on the V60 is still one of my favorite cameras out here. It is a very fast, very fluid camera. The camera viewfinder, when the scene is properly exposed, runs at a fluid 60 FPS. No other phone that I have, except for this, does that. And to me, that's very nice. This phone takes fantastic pictures still. I don't have many photos on here because I had to clean out my SD card. But I'll show you guys a couple photos that I've taken here. So, boom. That is very nice. The V60 does a better job with HDR than what the Xperia 1 Mark III does. I feel that mostly has to come down with the sensor size and how this sensor is designed compared to the more conventional 12 megapixel sensor. I'm not saying that the Xperia 1 Mark III is god awful with things like HDR. It definitely isn't. But the V60 is still a fantastic camera. I really don't have any sort of issues with how this camera does things. And their crop zoom, while it is a little bit grainy, it's not it's not over sharpened or anything like that. Compared to something like a iPhone 12 Pro Max, to me, that, or 12, 13 Pro Max, and even the 13 Pro, that's a win for me personally. This phone is just fantastic still with its camera. I really wish LG came back and brought the 64 megapixel sensor back with the Snapdragon 888 and gave us something very, very nice for a V60 follow-up. But yeah, this is very sharp. I really like the photos that come out of this phone. Again, it bends down to 16 megapixels. It's not always at a 64 megapixel mode, but you can toggle that in the camera settings where the aspect ratio is to 4:3 64 megapixels, and you can take photos like that. And very nice, very nice. The Xperia is a different beast, though. First, let me get out the basic mode. Basic. The Xperia as well feels very nice. It focuses very fast. It it auto exposes quite well. Really have no sort of issues with how this phone takes pictures whatsoever. It's not going to be a low light monster or anything like that. The V60 will definitely be better for things like low light. I will say that right now. But you do have things like, I keep doing that. I don't know why I do that. You have program auto, where you can adjust the exposure and all these other things right here. You have your shutter speed priority, which you stop down the shutter speed. You have a manual exposure, I think it's called. Yeah, manual exposure. And you have memory recall. I'm not really used to memory recall quite yet, so I'm not going to talk about that. But if you want just a basic mode, basic video mode or anything like that, you could just go to the basic mode. You go to this and you get 4K. You get the opportunity to get 4K HDR. And yeah, this phone takes very quality photos and videos. But when you want more, you go to the Cinema Pro app. And this is where you get things like your 4K 120 hertz slow-mo. You get your film looks. You get all these sort of things. You get a very nice amount of control over what your scene looks like, and I really do like that a lot. You have to adjust these right here, though. The moment you go into recording, it's not going to allow you to adjust these whatsoever after the fact. You can go into 2K or you can go into 4K. I do appreciate that they give you a 2K option. To me, that's very nice. Most phones don't. I don't think I've known any phone that allows you to do that. Good job on Sony for giving you that. Whereas on the V60, you have your photo, your manual video, and your video. Your video is where you can go up to 4K 60, I believe. Yeah, you can go up to 4K 60 and even 8K. Manual video is where you get your control over everything. And you can do this while recording. You can adjust your bit rate all the way up to 80 Mbps, which is the max that you can get out of the 4K 60 mode. To go out down to 1080p, I think it's 24 megabits per second. And while you're recording, you can just adjust this on the fly. You've seen me do this in videos sometimes where I'll just like manually adjust the video if, say, the exposure isn't right or the ISO is a little bit stopped up, too bright, things like that. You see me do that plenty of times. You have your regular photo, like I said. You have your manual camera, and yeah, you can use this for the wide angle as well, but you don't get manual. You don't get manual focus at all. This can go up to a 10x zoom. This can go up to a 12.5x digital crop zoom. It's a little bit soft, but compared to a regular digital crop zoom from just from one sensor, due to the fact that it's doing it off this telephoto that's already zoomed in, I think Sony does quite a good job of making sure that it looks decent. I'd rather have a softer photo than an over-sharpened photo. So yeah, I really do like what Sony did here in terms of that. Let's talk about phone stuff, right? Call quality, all of that stuff. So call quality on both of these phones are fine. I get 5G on here through either Google Fi or sometimes, depending on where I'm at, AT&T. I only get LTE plus speeds since this is the European model here, which I'm totally fine with. I don't necessarily need it. But if I want to go max, I can just do dual SIM. I could just dual SIM it if I want. And to me, that's a very nice feature to have. I never thought I wanted dual SIM until I got a phone with dual SIM, which is my first dual SIM phone. This is my first flagship Xperia. And I really do like that a lot. Very nice. Very nice indeed. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, yeah. Let's do call quality next. Both of these do very fine with that. Really no issues there. It's a phone. It does calls. It does great at. Both of them do great at it, and really no issues there. Haptics in terms of typing and all that stuff. Both of these have very good haptics. I'll definitely give the win to the V60 though. It just feels tighter. LG's been doing this since the V30, where they've had better haptics, and it's shown. The V60 has very good haptics, whereas this definitely has good haptics, but it's by no means springy or spongy or anything like that. It's tactile, but it's just not as strong as it is on here. Let's talk about Wi-Fi reception as well. Both of these do very good with Wi-Fi. This definitely has the edge, though. Both of these are very good with that stuff. Really have no issue with that whatsoever. In terms of hotspotting, because I know people do that as well, this can actually hotspot a Wi-Fi 6 signal out to a device, right? Not only that, but it could Wi-Fi share. Like, you can connect to Wi-Fi and just share Wi-Fi with another device if you don't want to put in a password or anything like that, and you already have your hotspot set up on another device. You can do that on here. I haven't seen any other phone that allows you to do that. So that's very nice. Yeah, in terms of both of these phones, I'll say this. The V60 obviously is going to stay with me forever until it obviously dies, right? But it's going to stay with me, period. The Xperia 1 Mark III, while not a complete replacement for what the V60 has done for me, like, I would have liked a stronger amp in the headphone jack and better battery life, but that's pretty much it. You still can't go wrong with the V60. You can't really go wrong with either of these phones today. If you want the better power, but keep in mind you're going to have thermals be a little bit hotter. That's quite a bit hotter. That's just the nature of the Snapdragon 888. Get the Xperia 1 Mark III, but use HS Power Control if you're doing any sort of serious gaming. If you just want a powerhouse, an utter powerhouse of a phone, that's still one of my top phones for video rendering and things like that, I would definitely go with something like the V60 still. It's still a fantastic phone. I really do like it a lot still, and it's just amazing. It's one of my favorite phones, period, like I said before. And the Xperia 1 Mark III is itching into that category as well. Inching into that. I said itching, but inching into that category as well. Whew. This is Sparta. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for support. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, or whatever time of day it is in the area. Like the video if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it. Share with people that are interested in this sort of content. Again, let me know in the comment section below what you feel. Thanks for almost, I think we're almost at 1,500 subscribers. Let me check real quick. I don't want to say that. I said 1,500. We're almost at 1,200 subscribers. We're at 1,145. Thanks for the continued support. I really do appreciate it. Share this video with people that are interested. Again, have a good one.